Trump walked into Colbert's show expecting to dominate, but then Colbert dropped this line. I have reports claiming that Ivanka gave birth to Barron secretly. And there are even photos of you, Ivanka, and a newborn baby that matched that timeline. What happened next left everyone stunned. It was an evening that no one had expected. The lights of New York City shone brightly as The Late Show with Stephen Colbert prepared for another night of interviews and laughs. The audience filed in excited for the usual mix of humor, celebrity guests, and witty commentary. But that night, something unusual was in the air. There was a buzz, a quiet tension that even the regulars in the studio could feel. No one had expected Donald Trump to show up. Not now, not here. Trump, the sitting president in 2025, was a figure who dominated headlines every single day. His presence in a late-night talk show setting was rare, and the moment he walked in, the atmosphere shifted immediately. Cameras flashed as he made his way to the set. The audience erupted with whispers and murmurs of surprise. Even Stephen Colbert, known for his poise and composure, looked briefly taken aback. There was a flicker in his eyes that said, "This is going to be different." But Trump had a reason for being there, and it was far bigger than a casual visit or a promotional appearance. In recent weeks, rumors had been spreading, loud, shocking, and impossible to ignore. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, alongside some high-profile figures, including former President Barack Obama, had made claims that sparked national debate. They suggested something extraordinary, something that seemed almost unbelievable, that Ivanka Trump, the president's daughter, was allegedly Barron Trump's real mother. The statement was bold, even shocking, and it had people talking across the country. Trump didn't appear on Colbert's show by accident. He wanted to confront the rumors hidden. He wanted to control the story, to take the narrative out of the hands of others and address it in front of millions. But as he entered the studio, it became clear that this was not going to be simple. While Trump was known for his boldness for confronting controversy directly and with force, Stephen Colbert had a different style. Colbert's strength was subtlety. His sharpness didn't always show at first glance. He had a way of making his points land slowly, with calm precision. And that night, that skill would become crucial. As Trump took his seat, he projected confidence. His usual energy, his unmistakable presence filled the room. The cameras followed him as he adjusted his suit and nodded to the audience, who were still murmuring in surprise. It was clear he was ready to speak, ready to set the record straight, and ready to take control of the conversation. But even in those first moments, there was an undercurrent of tension. Trump was entering an arena where the rules were different. Here, humor and calm wit could cut sharper than the loudest proclamation. The audience could sense that something important was about to happen. Conversations in the studio, usually casual and light, had taken on a sharper edge. People speculated quietly among themselves, trying to imagine what the interaction would look like. How would Colbert handle the president sitting across from him? Would Trump dominate the conversation, as he often did in press conferences and interviews? Or would Colbert manage to steer the exchange with his trademark calm humor? For Trump, this was a calculated move. By appearing on a late-night show, he could address the rumors in a setting that allowed him to speak directly to the public. Without filters, he wanted to take the narrative into his hands to shut down the claims before they gained more traction. But the twist was that Colbert was not an ordinary interviewer. He wasn't there to react with fear or deference. Colbert had a reputation for holding his own, for responding with wit and intelligence, no matter who was sitting across from him. And that made Trump's usual strategies, forceful rhetoric, sharp retorts, and confident delivery, less predictable. In their outcome, as the show began, the tension was almost palpable. The audience leaned forward, sensing that something unusual was about to unfold. Trump's entrance had already made the night different, and the rumors circulating outside the studio made it even more charged. It wasn't just another interview or another casual chat. This was a moment where national curiosity, personal stakes, and live television all collided. Trump's every gesture, every word carried weight, and Colbert's every response had the potential to shape how the story was received. Even before a single word was spoken about the rumors, the night felt historic. It was rare to see the president in such a setting, and rarer still to see him attempting to confront personal controversy on live television. There was an energy that couldn't be ignored. The audience wasn't just there for entertainment. They were there for a front-row view of a clash between two very different personalities. One bold, direct, and confrontational. The other calm, measured, and precise. And so, as Trump settled into his chair, the stage was set for an interaction that promised to be more than just an interview. It was a moment where confidence, controversy, and composure would collide. The unexpected appearance of Donald Trump on The Late Show wasn't just a surprise. It was a signal that something significant was about to unfold. A moment that would be remembered long after the cameras stopped rolling. As the cameras began rolling, Trump didn't waste a second. He leaned forward slightly, his expression confident, and opened with a line meant to grab attention. He wanted to make it clear from the very beginning that he wasn't here to play the quiet guest. This was his stage, and he intended to take control of it. "Stephen," he began, a smirk crossing his face, "you've got a nice show. People tell me that all the time, but let's be honest, it wouldn't survive without me being mentioned. Ratings, my name. You know it's true." The audience laughed, though the reaction was mixed. Some cheered at the boldness, enjoying the performance, while others laughed nervously, unsure if they should be amused or concerned. Trump's opening was a mix of humor and confidence, a blend of bragging and teasing. He was trying to set the tone. He was in charge, and he wasn't going to be pushed around. Colbert, for his part, remained calm. He smiled, letting the words hang in the air, giving Trump the impression that he was being noticed but not threatened. There was a subtle power in Colbert's calmness. He wasn't rushing to respond, and that lack of reaction had its own effect. It made Trump's attempts to dominate seem almost performative, like a man trying to convince himself as much as anyone else. Trump leaned back slightly in his chair, clearly enjoying the feeling of being in the spotlight. He wasn't done. He wanted to push further, to drive home his point and assert his authority over the conversation. "You talk about honesty," he continued, his tone sharp. "But your show, it's full of stories that aren't true. People spread rumors about me and my family, and you let them. You know it. Everyone knows it." At that moment, the audience sensed a shift. What had started as light, teasing, and playful self-promotion began to take on a defensive edge. Trump was no longer simply making jokes. He was attempting to protect his reputation and attack the credibility of his host at the same time. It was bold, aggressive, and unmistakably Trump. But Colbert did not flinch. He didn't argue or try to match Trump's energy. Instead, he let the words flow over him, almost as if he were letting the room absorb the tension. That patience made the air feel heavier. The audience noticed it immediately. There was a silent question hanging in the studio. How would Colbert respond? Trump seemed to sense the hesitation and pressed on. He shifted in his chair, leaning forward slightly, gesturing with his hands. His next words were pointed, personal, and calculated. "Stephen, you present yourself as friendly, honest, and fair. But we all know that's not the whole story. Your ratings are okay, but nothing compared to what people expect. People know the truth behind the screen." Here, Trump's tone mixed criticism with self-assurance. He wanted to make it clear that he was calling the shots. He was attempting to roast Colbert, to make the host seem small, and in doing so to appear larger himself. It was classic Trump strategy. Assert dominance, use humor, and blend fact with exaggeration in a way that keeps the audience off balance. Yet, the more Trump tried to take control, the more the audience started to notice the difference between force and composure. Trump's words were loud, his energy high. But Colbert's calmness created tension in its own way. It was a quiet power, subtle but effective. And it began to shift the focus from the president's attacks to the way they were landing or not landing on the host. Colbert finally spoke, but he did so without aggression. His voice was measured, almost conversational, as if he were talking to a friend rather than a president. He didn't interrupt Trump or challenge him directly. Instead, he allowed the audience to feel the contrast between the two men, one loud and forceful, the other calm and precise. Trump, sensing that he needed to regain momentum, tried again. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice for effect. "People push stories about me, and you let them spread. I don't like it. My family doesn't like it. And you know, Stephen, if you were really honest, you'd tell the truth." It was clear that Trump's main goal that evening was not just to entertain, but to defend his reputation. He wanted to put an end to the rumors about Ivanka and Barron. The way he approached it, though, was through forceful words, trying to dominate the conversation rather than engage in dialogue. He attempted humor as a shield, criticism as a weapon, and confidence as armor. Yet, even as he spoke, the tension in the room grew. The audience could feel that something bigger was happening. Trump's words were calculated and bold, but they were also reactive. They revealed that he felt the pressure, even subtly. Colbert's calm demeanor didn't just balance the energy, it exposed it. Trump was trying to take charge, but the more he pushed, the more the audience sensed that the narrative was no longer entirely in his hands. By the time the first few minutes passed, it was clear that the stage had been set for a confrontation of styles. Trump loud and direct, trying to control the moment, Colbert.com, and precise, letting the words of the president hang in the air before responding. The energy in the room was charged, not with laughter alone, but with anticipation. Everyone was waiting to see who would actually set the tone of the conversation. Trump's attempts to roast Colbert, To assert dominance and defend himself simultaneously created a tense, captivating dynamic. The audience could sense that this was no ordinary late-night interview. It was a moment where boldness met patience, where energy met composure, and where every word carried weight. The stage was no longer simply for entertainment. It had become a battleground of personality, strategy, and reputation. And in that charged atmosphere, the question lingered. Could Trump truly take control? Or had the calm intelligence of Colbert already begun to shift the balance in ways the audience could feel, even if they couldn't yet see? After Trump had spoken, after his bold lines and pointed criticisms had filled the studio, a silence fell over the room. It wasn't the quiet that comes before laughter or applause. This was a heavier silence, a pause that carried weight, the kind of pause that made the audience lean forward, sensing that something important was about to happen. It was a moment that demanded attention, not because of loud words or dramatic gestures, but because of the quiet that followed. Colbert let the silence stretch just long enough for it to be felt, then spoke, not quickly, not sharply, but with a calm and measured voice that contrasted sharply with the high energy of Trump's previous words. "Mr. President," he said softly, almost conversationally, "I don't invite guests to make them look bad, but I do believe in facts." The words themselves were simple, but their impact was immediate. Trump, used to commanding attention with volume and force, shifted slightly. The energy in the room changed subtly. The audience, who had been leaning in, now leaned in even closer. What Colbert had said was not an insult, not a joke, not a challenge. Yet, it carried authority, a quiet strength that made everyone pause and think. Trump, confident as he was, found himself momentarily off balance. For a man used to directing conversations, being confronted with calm precision instead of anger or mockery was unusual. He had expected a battle of words, a series of quick comebacks and witty exchanges. Instead, Colbert had slowed the pace, setting a tone that made every word matter. Colbert continued, carefully choosing each phrase. "You've said the rumors are false," he said, "but I have something you might want to see." Even in these simple words, the tension in the studio intensified. The audience reacted subtly at first. A shift in posture, a held breath, the quiet murmur of anticipation. No one knew exactly what Colbert had, but the suggestion alone created suspense. It was a remarkable moment because it relied entirely on restraint. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't mocking. He wasn't forcing a reaction, yet he had every eye in the room fixed on him. Trump's reaction was telling. He shifted in his chair, a slight frown crossing his face. The energy he had brought with him, the confidence, the forceful presence was meeting a calm it couldn't easily overcome. He opened his mouth as if to respond, but no words came immediately. He realized, perhaps too late, that the rules of this encounter were different. Here, loudness and bluster didn't automatically win. Timing, patience, and precision held power in ways he wasn't used to experiencing. The audience could feel it. They could sense that the next moments would be critical. Colbert had set the stage for something more serious, something that went beyond jokes and ratings. The rumors that Trump had come to confront were weighty, controversial, and deeply personal. By not responding with aggression, Colbert elevated the conversation. He made it clear that what mattered wasn't just who spoke the loudest, but who spoke with clarity and credibility. For Trump, the challenge was subtle, but significant. He wanted to dominate, to assert control, to turn the moment into a victory. But he had entered a space where the usual rules didn't apply. Colbert's calmness was not passive, it was strategic. Each pause, each carefully chosen word was a quiet signal that the host was fully in control of the flow of the conversation. It was a reminder that power isn't always shown through volume or aggression. Sometimes it's shown through patience and precision. Then Colbert delivered another line that shifted the entire dynamic. "I have reports," he said, "that might surprise you, something you should consider carefully because it relates directly to the topic everyone is talking about." The effect was immediate. Trump's confident posture shifted again. His hands twitched slightly, betraying a hint of discomfort. The audience, sensing that something was coming, leaned in even more. There was a sense of anticipation, a collective realization that the next words would define the tone of the entire segment. Colbert's.com voice continued, steady and unflinching. "You've said the rumors are false. You've denied them, but the information I have is detailed, and it cannot be ignored. This is an opportunity to clarify, to address facts directly, and to do so in front of the audience that is watching closely." Every word was carefully measured. There was no ridicule, no mockery, no attempt to humiliate, just clarity, calm, and a firm sense of purpose. The contrast between Trump's high-energy defense and Colbert's composed delivery was stark. The audience could feel the shift in momentum. The air was charged, not with shouting or laughter, but with expectation, suspense, and the knowledge that something significant was about to unfold. At this point, Trump tried to reassert control. He opened his mouth to interrupt, to inject his own energy back into the moment. But the pause, the weight, and the clarity of Colbert's words made it difficult. Every attempt to dominate verbally was subtly countered by Colbert's calm authority. The balance of power for the first time in the conversation was beginning to tilt. Colbert's measured approach was a reminder of the strength that lies in restraint. He didn't need to fight, shout, or provoke to gain the upper hand. By staying calm, he created tension, anticipation, and a sense of authority. The audience was captivated, not because of dramatic action, but because of the way he had quietly shifted the energy of the room. Trump's attempts to roast, defend, and assert control were meeting a wall of calm that demanded attention and respect. In those minutes, the stage was set for the moment that would define the night. The calm before the blow was not empty. It was charged with strategy, intelligence, and anticipation. Everyone in the studio, and everyone watching, knew something was coming, something that would reveal not just the rumors, but the power of composure and precision in handling a tense, high-stakes situation. And so the calm hung in the air, heavy with expectation, as Colbert prepared to deliver the next words. Words that would change the tone of the night, silence the bluster, and leave an impression that would linger far beyond the television cameras. The room had gone quiet. Every eye in the studio was fixed on Colbert, waiting for him to speak. The calm that had hung in the air moments before was now charged with tension. Trump, usually so confident, shifted in his seat. He had tried to take control earlier, using bold words and pointed jabs, but Colbert's measured approach had begun to pull the balance away from him. Then, without raising his voice or showing any hint of aggression, Colbert leaned slightly forward and began to speak. "I have reports claiming that Ivanka gave birth to Barron secretly," he said, his voice steady. The words were simple, almost understated, but their weight hit the room like a stone dropped into still water. The audience felt it immediately. Gasps rippled through the studio as the significance of the statement sank in. Trump froze. For the first time that evening, he didn't have an immediate response. His mind raced, looking for a way to counter or dismiss the claim, but nothing came instantly. His usual quick comebacks, the ones that had worked so many times before, seemed to vanish in the presence of Colbert's calm authority. The silence that followed Colbert's words spoke louder than any rebuttal could have. Colbert continued, without a pause. "And there are even photos," he added, "of you, Ivanka, and a newborn baby that matched the timeline." The statement landed like a thunderclap. The audience's reaction shifted from nervous murmurs to audible astonishment. People in the crowd were leaning forward, holding their breath, some whispering to neighbors, others simply staring, unsure whether to laugh or gasp. The tension was palpable, electric. Trump's face tightened. He tried to interrupt, raising his voice and pointing at Colbert. "That's fake." "All fake," he said, the words coming out louder than usual. He wanted to reclaim control, to dismiss the claim, to regain the momentum he had lost. But Colbert didn't react in the way Trump might have expected. There was no flinch, no anger, no need to argue. The calmness remained, even in the face of the president's raised voice. Colbert's response was simple, controlled, and devastatingly effective. "Then you'll have a chance to explain it right now," he said, "because the audience deserves to know what's real." Those words weren't meant to provoke. They were meant to shift responsibility back where it belonged. For the first time in the conversation, the focus wasn't on the host's wit or the president's energy. It was on the facts, on clarity, and on the moment itself. The shift was immediate and undeniable. Trump, who had opened the show, trying to dominate, now found himself reacting. His face tightened further, a flash of discomfort passing over it. He opened his mouth again, searching for a line, a comeback, a way to regain authority. But Colbert's calm delivery had created a space where words alone no longer worked. The room had changed. The conversation had shifted from banter to confrontation, from roast to reckoning. The audience could feel the gravity of the moment. It wasn't just about rumors or controversy anymore. It was about presence, composure, and the weight of words. Colbert had demonstrated that you didn't need to raise your voice to command attention. His calm reasoning, combined with the dramatic weight of information he presented, held the room in a grip far stronger than any loud declaration or pointed insult could have. Trump tried again. His tone, a mixture of disbelief and insistence. "There's nothing here. Nothing. It's all made up." He gestured, trying to show force to prove certainty, but the gesture only emphasized his unease. Colbert, still steady, allowed the audience to witness this contrast. A man known for confidence, now uncertain. A host, known for calm, now firmly in control. The moment stretched, each second intensifying the tension. Everyone watching knew they were seeing something unusual. In politics, in media, in any high-stakes situation, it's rare to see someone so bold caught in a moment of hesitation. Trump had walked into this segment expecting to dominate, to roast, and to defend himself with energy and force. Instead, he was forced into a defensive posture, responding to calm, reasoning, and clear statements. Unable to regain the narrative, Colbert continued without escalation, allowing the silence, the words, and the reactions to do the work. The audience was captivated, absorbing every glance, every pause, every inflection. Trump's attempts at energy and bluster contrasted sharply with the deliberate control Colbert maintained. It was a lesson in communication as much as it was an unfolding drama. Power, it became clear, didn't always lie in force. It often lay in timing, composure, and precision. By the time Colbert paused, the room had completely changed. The energy that Trump had brought in, with confidence and boldness, was now met with scrutiny and suspense. The moment had transformed into a quiet but undeniable shift in authority. The audience, who had come expecting jokes and entertainment, were now witnesses to something far more revealing: the strength of calmness in the face of pressure, the power of careful words over aggressive energy. For Trump, the impact was clear. He had walked into the show trying to roast, defend, and assert dominance. Instead, he had become reactive, forced to defend himself in a setting where composure carried more weight than volume. The moment wasn't loud or flashy, but it was decisive. It left an impression that words alone could not easily erase. And as the studio held its collective breath, the message was undeniable. Colbert had proven that calm, clarity, and careful timing could neutralize even the most forceful attempts to dominate. The audience saw it. Trump felt it, and the energy in the room confirmed it. This was a turning point, a moment that would linger long after the cameras stopped rolling. By the time the cameras stopped rolling, the atmosphere in the studio had completely shifted. What had begun as a late-night interview with jokes, playful roasts, and confident banter had transformed into a tense, reflective moment that left everyone in the room thinking. Trump had walked in, expecting to dominate, to roast, to defend himself with bold words and forceful energy. Instead, the night had unfolded in a way that few could have predicted. Trump's reactions throughout the show had revealed a side rarely seen on television. He was usually quick to retort, fast to reclaim control, and almost never caught off guard. But in that quiet, tense moment, when Colbert calmly presented the reports and photos, Trump had struggled to respond. His usual armor of confidence seemed to falter, replaced by uncertainty and hesitation. For the audience, this was the most revealing part of the evening. It wasn't a dramatic shouting match, nor was it a theatrical argument. It was something quieter, yet more powerful. A moment that showed the limits of force when met with composure. Colbert had never raised his voice, never insulted Trump, never tried to humiliate him. He didn't need to. Every word he chose, every pause he took, subtly shifted the energy of the room. The audience watching closely could feel the difference between aggression and calm authority. By the time the segment ended, it was clear that the host had gained the upper hand without ever appearing confrontational. His strength lay in patience, clarity, and the careful delivery of facts. Meanwhile, Trump's attempt to roast Colbert to make the host appear small and himself appear dominant had backfired. The audience could see that his energy, which normally commanded attention, was now working against him. Each attempt to assert control seemed less effective, almost performative. The tension created by Colbert's.com presence had turned the tables. The president, known for being bold and unshakable, had been shown a rare instance where composure outweighed volume and clarity outweighed aggression. When the show concluded, conversations didn't revolve around who had told the funniest joke or who had delivered the best insult. Instead, everyone was talking about the moment itself, the silent power of calm reasoning, the contrast between two approaches to communication, and the subtle shift of authority that had taken place. The rumors that Trump had come to address were no longer the sole focus. Now, the real story was about how the conversation had played out, how the dynamic between Trump and Colbert had unfolded, and what it revealed about both men. It was a lesson in presence and strategy. Trump's approach had been bold, forceful, and confrontational. Colbert's approach had been patient, deliberate, and calm. And in that balance, or imbalance, the audience saw a truth that transcended politics or late-night television. Confidence alone is not always enough. Timing, tone, and restraint can have a far greater impact than volume and aggression. Yet, the evening left open questions. Did Trump manage to protect his reputation, or did the segment only raise more doubts? He had gone into the interview aiming to shut down the rumors, to control the narrative, and to show dominance. But by the end, the conversation had taken a life of its own. Instead of ending the speculation, it had intensified attention. People were left wondering, thinking, and talking. The attempt to dominate had unintentionally shifted focus onto the controversy itself and on how it had been handled. For the audience, the impact was clear. They had witnessed something unusual, a moment where calm intelligence and careful wording carried more weight than force or intimidation. The contrast between Trump's high-energy assertiveness and Colbert's controlled, precise responses created a dynamic that was fascinating, educational, and unexpected. It showed that influence is not always about speaking louder or being bolder. Sometimes it's about listening, pausing, and delivering words with intent. The aftermath of the show wasn't just about Trump or Colbert. It was about perception. How people viewed the president, the host, and the claims being discussed had shifted subtly but significantly. Colbert had succeeded in framing the narrative, without confrontation, proving that authority can be demonstrated quietly without anger or theatrics. Trump, on the other hand, had demonstrated that even the most confident figures can face moments where control is challenged, and where boldness alone cannot dictate the outcome. By the time viewers reflected on the segment, one thing became clear. The night had been more than entertainment. It had been a study in communication, strategy, and human behavior under pressure. The audience saw the power of calm, composure, the effective timing, and the subtle strength of intelligence. And they saw that aggression and volume, while attention-grabbing, do not always lead to success when measured against thoughtful and deliberate action. As the cameras faded and the studio lights dimmed, the final question lingered in everyone's mind. Did Trump's appearance truly help him? Or had the attempt to roast, defend, and dominate only amplified the story, drawing more attention to the controversy and to the way it had been handled? The answer was not simple. What was undeniable, however, was the impact of Colbert's calm authority. In a night filled with potential chaos, the host had demonstrated that true control often lies not in force, but in restraint. What do you think about Colbert's response? Did he go too far, or was he just doing his job? Share your thoughts below. This one's going to keep people